Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and a Patreon supporter replay. This is Armour on his EU account. Normally he plays on NA and he's in the Königsberg, which of course is the tier 5 light German cruiser. Before I get to talking about the game though, or the ship, I feel like I do this a lot. I apologise for not making a lot of videos recently, but it's just been the case that I've not been feeling too fantastic to the point where I'm probably going to go and talk to my GP soon about either getting a higher dosage of the brain pills that I'm already on, or else trying some different brain pills completely, because everything's just been a struggle at the moment, even the daily small stuff. And once that starts sucking up all your energy, you don't have a lot left for everything else. So, onto the game and the ship. This is a pretty nice tier 5 cruiser. Much like every other tier 5 cruiser, pretty much. It's made of squish. It doesn't really have a lot of survivability outside of its ability to dodge. But what it does have, which is actually pretty exceptional for its tier, is a 16.5 kilometer range. And you'd rather be made of squish and have a good range, and also pretty decent stealth to go on top of that, than to be made of squish and have really terrible range. And there's certainly a few of those at tier 5, a few cruisers that meet that criteria. Of course, the worst offender is the Emerald, but at least that has got a smoke. On top of that, of course, this being a German cruiser, it gets the increased HE pen, so although you have a base lower fire chance, you essentially have a built-in IFHE. It's 38mm of penetration, so it's a really capable little damage dealer. And on top of all of that, not only do you also have pretty decent 6 kilometer torps, which we'll get to see Armour use in this particular match, but the rear two turrets also fully rotate through 360 degrees, and the firing angles are actually pretty decent as well. And it was a really nice... I can't remember which one had it first. Was it the Nuremberg that had it first and then the Königsberg got it, or was it the other way around? I can't remember. One of them had it and the other didn't for a long while, and then they decided to both give them it. I think it was the Nuremberg that didn't have it. I remember it being a really nice addition. So yeah, overall, just a very nice package. And it certainly handles down tiers a bit better than some of the other tier 5 cruisers, purely because of that extra range it has. And as a nice little bonus, you've got decent German hydro and also a catapult fighter as well, which is very handy when you're going to be seeing carriers quite often. However, in terms of range, that doesn't matter quite so much, because this is a top tier game and there aren't any carriers to worry about. So yeah, he can be a little more free with his actions. Obviously getting hit by a tier 5 battleship is still going to hurt a lot, but as long as he plays smart, there's less to worry about. So having come to the middle and gotten his first kill, he's got plenty to shoot at, in that he can basically reach both caps with his range. Obviously he's got better shots at the stuff to the north, so that's what he's going for at the moment. He's slightly abandoned his division mate in the Cavour. They weren't really playing together in any sense, I have to say, but sometimes it just works out like that. Sometimes you aren't really in ships that can support each other that well, or the situation means that it's better to go off and do your own thing. And given that it really would be a good idea to get 2/3 of the caps, trying to whittle down the enemy team to the north seems like a pretty good thing to be doing right now. He does have some support here as well, but the two battleships are fairly far back there, so it's basically him and these other two cruisers in the middle, and then those battleships putting in some more ranged fire. And if the enemy battleships decide that you're more fun to shoot at, then that could be a bit of a problem. He's got some island cover to work with here, though. The arcs are decent on this, but the downside is that means there's less island cover that you can use overall. And actually, that's where the range can kind of work against you. It can be easier to get spotted by something that you can't see just because of that 16.5 kilometers range, and therefore harder to get unspotted. He's also not running the help they're shooting at me skill, or the help they're aiming at me skill. I can't remember what it's called now. Good job, brain. But yeah, clearly he is being a bit shot at here, and especially the Texas, he has to be worried. He's giving a lot of broadside to that Texas, although the Texas does appear to be firing other things right now, so that's fine. In terms of other ships, there's that cruiser, which is low health. That's less of an issue, but there's also a König that is actually quite close now on the other side of that island, and he could do the super risky thing and actually go face first into the König and try and torpedo them, but he's going to be a little more cautious than that and try and preserve his hit points. He's taking some fire from the south here as well, which is kind of where the captain skill comes in useful, or any of the incoming fire captain skills, just because you can tell when you might be attracting attention from directions that you're not paying attention to. So it looks like this König might actually be trying to push here. The Königsberg, the enemy Königsberg's low health, they're worth taking out. But with his allies to the south having been demolished at this point, yeah, he can't really sit and use this position and count on them being distracted anymore. He's actually now got to get moving. So, torpedoes out. Some of those look like they might hit. They're not super fast torpedoes, but they are fast enough, and maybe the König wasn't expecting them, or maybe they just, you know, were trying to maneuver to avoid and guessed badly. But either way, they've taken 2, and that has been a pretty decent amount of damage, and because it's torps on both sides, and it's double sets of torps on this ship, he can just put out another spread. And if, I think 1 or 2 more catch that, I think it'll take 2 to catch that König. That will be the end of them. So that leaves the A-cap ready to take, and once this König gets taken out of the equation, there we go, there's 1 and there's 2, there's the kill. He'll then be unspotted as well and be able to reposition a bit more effectively. There's not a lot of ships left on either team now. There is that poor, what is that, Valkyrin being hunted down on the J line, but they have drawn the enemy destroyer and one of their battleships down south as well. So really it's just the low health Piotr Veliki who is actually in range, and also that Montecuccoli who's trying to cap the mid, and the Nicholas has actually killed the October Revolution that was down there, so yeah, that could potentially have been a nasty ship if it had any decent amount of health left. The Montecuccoli is full health though, but it has a rather lower rate of fire. It's still a light cruiser, but it's the SAP shells, so they're maybe not quite as dangerous as HE fire would have been, just because there's no potential to set any fires going on. But still, they can do damage if he's given enough time to do damage. And I actually kind of like the Montecuccoli, to be honest. Not as much as, say, the Omaha or this, but yeah, it's not a bad little ship. That Piotr Veliki, though, firing HE for some reason, but yeah, the lower health target and therefore probably the more attractive target, although he does actually take the opportunity to get some AP shells into that broadside Montecuccoli, and he's got a hydro just about to come up, so that would be a really good time to use it. So there's the Montecuccoli's torps sailing past, long range but slow, and there's only 2 of them, so they're not super dangerous, and I guess we just have to see if they're going to come out broadside enough for the AP to do its work, and the answer is yes. And they're not really effectively angling here, so that is the end of the Montecuccoli. And another kill, and, well, that's his high caliber now as well. Because that's 123,000 damage done. And if he can get one more, he'll get the Kraken. And of course there is one more left, there is that T22. So I think it's fair to say Armor has absolutely kicked ass here. He really has. He's basically... I mean, he's taken advantage of people ignoring him, but also he's used every advantage that this cruiser affords and been able to play accordingly. The only real risk here is that his Hydro has just run out, but he basically only just needs to beat the T22 in terms of the hit points running out. It's not like they're going to get a chance to get a second reload, most likely. Having a Hydro here would be useful, and I think we can safely say... he started with 3 Hydros, right? So yeah, he's not running Superintendent here, but to be honest, that's a less useful skill on most tier 5 cruisers. And on a lot of cruisers generally, I tend to only take Superintendent on cruisers where it'll give you like another fuel smoke or another heal or something like that. Anyway, so he did get the Kraken in the end. 131,000 damage done, and a nice little clutch of medals there. 2,399 base XP. Now, it's always true that you can get away with things in the mid tiers that you can't necessarily in the high tiers, partly because of the players, but also partly because of the ships involved. And I think that might have gone a bit differently if, say, there were some carriers in play, although if there were carriers in play it would have had to be a tier 6 game. So yeah, the matchmaking was definitely quite nice there as well. Even just having tier 6 ships can introduce some quite nasty guns in terms of caliber and even just numbers of guns. So yeah. Still though, I like this ship. It is a good tier 5 cruiser, and it's certainly been one of my keepers at the tier, and I think this game illustrates quite why it's such a nice little ship to keep around. Anyway, so that is it for this Patreon supporter replay. If you enjoyed it, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.